The world of digital marketing moves at a dizzying speed. Strategies, budgets, tactics, buzzwords. How can we even begin to distinguish the signal from the noise, the good moves from the bad? Take it from the team that's tripped as much as we've triumphed. We're putting our best moves in the spotlight and spilling every secret to give you step-by-step instructions to steal for your own success and digitally scale your business. This is Marketing Moves.
Welcome back to another episode of Marketing Moves. I'm your host, Ashtyn Morris, Senior Account Executive and Strategic Partnerships Lead at VividFront. Today, I'm joined by Kevin Goodman, Managing Director and Partner at Blue Bridge Networks, a downtown Cleveland-based data center, managed IT services, cloud computing, and cybersecurity powerhouse. For over 2 decades, Kevin has been the driving force behind Blue Bridge's evolution from a traditional co-location facility to a comprehensive IT partner. What makes this story fascinating is that he isn't a traditional tech guy. With a background in political science and the construction industry, he approached the IT world from a purely human, relationship-driven perspective. Today, we're unpacking his journey, the state of the data center industry in 2026, and how you can successfully market a highly complex technical business by keeping things fundamentally human. Kevin, welcome to Marketing Moves. I'm so glad you could join me today. You have such an incredible career, and I know we're in for a great conversation. You've been at Blue Bridge since 2005, shortly after your brother founded it. Can you share a bit about your background and how you ended up at Blue Bridge?
February 1st will be 21 years.
Wow.
So you're dead on. 2005. The company was started January of 2004. And my journey before Blue Bridge was not technical. It was in construction. I built essentially high-end residential construction projects. My last big project was Jim Tomey's hunting lodge in Peoria. And some work for his family there and her family here, his wife. And so I got sick with cancer, and it's pretty hard to run a construction company when you're selling, procuring, billing, running the crews. It's one guy who runs the show, and when I got sick, I couldn't run it. So essentially lost my company and had to start over. So I came to my brother for money to help me get through some times. And he said, I won't give you money, but I'll give you a job. And you bring that same customer service mentality, and you be the customer on the inside, which I remain today. And you'll be like in a deer in headlights for a while, but you'll be just fine. And then that's how, I got started. But my background and what I studied in undergrad was political science and graduate school, law school, and master's in public administration at Cleveland State, all of that. So my educational background in many ways does not fit where I am today, but in many ways it is very helpful.
Oh, absolutely. I bet that's an asset in your space. So can you talk about early on, what were you doing when you first joined the team?
When I first joined the team, I was business development, and I was also the customer on the inside, so I was very skeptical of what we said we had and who we were and what we are. And so what I'll call three-inning ball players, not because they're bad people, but they're good startup, but they're not long-term. Mm-hmm. And none of them are here, so they're good people, but I started researching and digging in and finding out that we weren't quite who we said we were from an infrastructure standpoint and from products and services. And so you can imagine, even though I'm a BD guy, they're wondering, why doesn't he just stay in his room? He's his little brother, just stay out of our way. And it was very contentious because I asked some very difficult questions. And in my viewpoint, and again, this is my viewpoint, they took a $20 million Maserati and they were running it into the walls. And I knew something was wrong. And so I offered up a lot of what things should be, whether it was law and public policy, infrastructure, disaster recovery, business continuity, the technology, and the products and services that we were delivering. And so that we could be who we said we are, and then some. And so that concept of being the customer on the inside was not easy for my peers. and it made a very difficult relationship because I asked a lot of questions and pushed a lot of buttons.
You have to do that to keep the organization honest and keep them moving forward. Did that cause any friction with your brother, you coming in and asking some of those tough questions?
No, my brother's very, very logical and literal, dependable, honest, and that resonated with him. He didn't engage with it because he has other businesses, and that was not, our business is not his primary business. But we did have conversations, and I don't think they made him happy. Who would be happy to know you got to spend $2 million more to get it right? But he was, because then we got it right, and then the revenue could flow, and then the company could grow. So in the short term, he gave me a long leash, and there were conversations with some of these employees who I was, let's say, difficult with, came to him and said, if he doesn't do X, Y, and Z, we're going to leave. Then if he's right, you got to leave. Mm-hmm. And so eventually all of them were gone. And then I started with my own team. So in essence, I founded the company because I gutted what we had and started from scratch. But that, not literally, my brother did.
That's awesome. And you're big on left brain, right brain, correct? Can you share a little bit about that and the story behind it?
For me, it's funny because you have to stay out of the land of hubris when you talk about intelligence. It's the guy or gal that says they're intelligent that they're not. But my experience was always left brain, right brain, and a high IQ. And that was just the way it is. And so I gravitated to, I thought I would be an attorney. I thought I would do those kinds of things. And so when I came to Bluebridge, I first applied my intellect in terms of disaster recovery, business continuity, risk management, things that were intellectual and law and public policy that were important to the operation of a data center. And I could grasp that very quickly and then apply that to our delivery of service every day. And then later, piece by piece, I became certified in everything we do, engineering-wise. The first 10 years I was on the ticket system, so I assisted answering trouble tickets and engineering problems. And the irony is, and I say it out loud, and I say, maybe you shouldn't say this, but I've said it so many times, it's the way it is. I didn't know what a Word file was, let alone how to save it when I started. That's a long ways to come from there to where you're highly certified. Clearance with government clearance, we do a lot of state and local infrastructure, the county, Geauga County, NG 911, other kinds of very important implementations that take not just the technology and the understanding of law and public policy and audits and frameworks, IT frameworks, security frameworks, but also certification and knowledge of the technology. Mm-hmm. And also tying that into whether it's a government entity or a business and IT objectives together. Mm-hmm. So that you're using technology and then the company wants to do this with technology to raise revenue, to be more efficient in their HR or what have you, or their deployment of payroll and such. So to be able to have those kinds of conversations, it's interesting. I can go to a room where one would need a sales engineer, the engineer and the salesman. I bring people because he likes two sets of ears, but I don't really need anybody there because I'm taking in the whole thing. And really the dialogue, which I think is hard for most people to be able to talk, network, engage, lead, and then technology, and then learn, and then business, and then law, and then public policy, and all that together. It makes for a valuable employee.
Absolutely. I think it's a testament that you can learn anything if you put your mind to it. And I'm really excited to dig into what you guys offer and the services and really what you've built. But there's a really good story behind the name. Can you share it?
Oh, yeah. So my brother had a boat and he was on Cuyahoga River. He's on the phone and he was looking up and somebody said, "What are you going to call the company?" And he looked up and he said, "Bluebridge." It's Bluebridge. You know, the Blue Bridge is in Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, known for their bridges. And we were named after the Blue Bridge. And then later when I came, I put some reason to what that Blue Bridge is. And basically east side, west side in that Blue Bridge, spanning the technology divide. Mm. So the idea of business, technology, et cetera, or business needing the proper technology and bridging that through technology.
Look at you. You're a marketing mind.
And my marketing mind turned it into that. And it stays that. It's relevant today. Excuse me. We're different technologies, some the same, but essentially we are spanning the technology divide for customers and firms and institutions.
Yeah, you started primarily as a co-location data center, but it's evolved into a massive ecosystem. Before we dive into the business, can you just give us a brief overview of the industry, any key terms, so that our audience can keep up with all of the information that you're going to be sharing with us?
Sure. And it is a pithy standpoint. It's 8 layers of technology in 21 years.
Wow.
So that would be the quick answer. But at first, what it was is low-density computing. And our computer rooms had wet cell batteries and inverters, and what I would say would today be inefficient. It would not be powerful enough to drive the infrastructure that we have today. And then we moved from that to power distribution units, PDUs, RPPs, those kinds of things like equivalent to what is the panel in your house. And they used to have to have dangerous put on a suit and gauge to know where you were at, where we made all that automated way before AI. And so it's branch level monitoring down to the circuit. It's bringing the gear closer to the equipment, which improves efficiencies, less distance, less degradation of the power, and then increased airflow and things that we would do to divert flow in different manners to improve. Before, people were thinking about what is to be a friend of the good earth and reduce your carbon footprint and what kind of power data centers utilize. We were doing that early on. On one hand, it was easy to sell because the economics were there, reduce costs, improve efficiencies. And on the other hand, it was easy to sell because we would be a notch better than the next team. More reliable, more redundant, more highly available. So that facilitated, in short, racks were using, let's say, 2.5 kVA. So you just take that number, 2.5. And what racks use today are 8.5. So that in 20 years is a huge span. The average rack is 8.5 kVA. The average rack 20 years ago was 2.5. So the infrastructure has had to evolve to handle the proliferation of software and other AI and other kinds of engineering that runs and drives business and such today. So we were a data center. We took your servers and they lived in our facility. And some of our early adopters were some great Cleveland companies like Dealer Tire, Olympic Steel, Highland Software, and Jurnoff, which Tim Upsitnik, who's still local in the cyber world. They were really our cheerleaders and got behind us and really helped us get off the ground and make these changes and make these investments. So first, your co-location, you move your infrastructure to a more powerful, more efficient, and then we began to expand our products and services. So hiring engineers, system and network engineers who could begin to sell managed services. So monitoring, patching, capacity planning, is it up, is it down, CPU utilization, all those kinds of things where you're basically doing what's necessary to make sure the systems are up and running and reporting on the same, and then intervening if they're not and solving that. So today that has expanded, and also we've moved into, in a very deep way, what's called an MSSP, which is a managed cybersecurity provider. And so we have what are called cyber analysts. Oftentimes they're made up of network engineers, but also they're made up of people who maybe studied computer science, but also have a background in logic or philosophy or deductive reasoning, mathematics, research methods, those kinds of things. So analytical minds that aid the machine and find solutions in a much more efficient way. It's actually fascinating to watch a mind like that, couple it with technology and a team and point to the problem and solve it or stop it. And then we've been a licensed hardware software reseller and data protection, data backups. We have interconnected pipes between our Cleveland and Columbus facilities, which are on two different national power grids. So we've created disaster recovery, DRBC, 2 sites. In between, you can do your primary here and your secondary there, or vice versa. So we have a lot of customers that do that. And then we have a lot of customers that'll do their primary or their backup at their own premise, and then the opposite with us.
Wow, that's incredible. How big of an organization do you oversee?
It's a hard thing to answer because much of what we do and utilize are layers of other companies' software or services. So if you get to the FTE, it's about 50 people if you include that concept. And then you also have your salespeople, your accountants, but primarily the senior system network engineers, those 2 topics, and then the cyber analysts are newer, so that's growing. But that's a big team, and the revenues are much larger. Let's just say that on the 20,000 square foot on the one floor, what it is 16 times what it would have been in the co-location days.
Wow.
And you couldn't have thought that 21 years ago. This will drive 16 times the revenue of what's driving today full. And it's the expansion of all of those other products and services and the efficiencies that I just laid out that created that environment and that ecosystem. And then a lot of those customers who are on our floor also became providers. So we all grew up together.
That's incredible.
It's interesting. Highland was with us for 20 years, and I watched them grow from a 4U server to 16 racks of NetApp gear for on-base backed up all around the world. And so just that proliferation of product service, but also mass, density, scope is also sometimes for me is hard to get my head around because I lived it and watched it evolve. But it really was exactly how it happened.
How would you explain Blue Bridge specifically to someone who isn't as well versed in tech and what you guys do?
That's a great question, and there's a lot of ways to answer it, but I'll try it this way. In a web and data-centric world, what we do is manage the lifeblood of a company, and that's its data. I also say we're in the business of keeping businesses in business through data center services. And once again, in a web and data-centric world, data is the lifeblood. Keeping a business highly available, reliable, secure, compliant is doing just that. And so that's the business we're in. And that's an oversimplification, but it's
powerful.
It's a technology company, and we deliver high availability, reliability, security, and compliance through the technologies and through the human intervention, and which is equal or even more important in a lot of ways.
Agreed. What differentiates you from other players in the space?
That's another great question. And first of all, I would say to you, we have a lot of great competitors in Northeast Ohio, which is super because it makes us all better. And we all have pretty good collegial relationships. Sometimes we have to onboard or offboard a customer one to the other, and it's important that we take care of the customer together. And those have almost always been very collegial. So that's an example of what I mean by being collegial. They make you better because they invest, you invest. It's cutting edge, bleeding edge. But I think it's not about technology that makes us better. It's the people, and we're headquartered here, and we're from here. And we're with your children in the sandlots, with our children on baseball, and we're sitting in the same church or temple pews, and we're neighbors. We grew up together, went to the same schools, this kind of thing. The DNA of the city, industrialized era, is the same DNA in the technology era. And We share in that DNA where these companies that come here from other places do not.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that they also do not do in a very strong way is join boards, institutions, serve, have volunteer days, or support your employees to have board membership and to bring skills back to Blue Bridge that, quite frankly, we could or would never teach them. But because they're on the board, they bring and learn these skills. So it's a return on the investment in that way. But I think to answer that question once again in a more simple way is we're from here. We believe in the concept of a dollar spent here is exponentially grown versus a dollar spent here and sent somewhere else. It goes down to 43 cents versus if it's spent here and stays here, it's $1.23. That simple statement, you just think about 43 cents versus $1.23. It's here. We reinvest here. We pay taxes here. The buildings we own, we pay property tax. We happily fund the Cleveland Municipal School District with our buildings, for an example. And so being excited to be from here gives us an advantage, not just at how we're looked at, but when we're in dialogue. I understand your business and who you're serving and who you want to sell to and who you want to be with because we're from here together. And we can have a more sophisticated, concise, and correct dialogue about solutions because I can understand their business better because I'm from here too.
Absolutely. That goes a long way, connecting on that people first level. How would you describe your company culture?
It's intense, what we do day to day. I have a lot of friends in my life, but not a lot of friends. I have a lot of acquaintances and some very few friends. And in 21 years, I've only had one friend. And you'd say, wow, that's pretty crazy. It's very nice. It's not a place for friendship. It's a place for camaraderie and mutual admiration, but it's very intense. And what we do in a web and data-centric world, could we fail and someone die? Yes. Could we fail and the helicopter not get dispatched where that patient is? Yes. Patient information that's needed from a backup from a local hospital to do XYZ? Yeah. Could we be robbed of companies that do billions of dollars of transaction a year in our floor? Yes. So that when you think about that and you try to get your head, you try to call 911 and you can't get to the first responder, or the officer can't get to the criminal database, or you keep going down the list. The pressure of that reality of what we do and who we serve really doesn't allow like time for social interaction. But people do get close in terms of their skills and strengths. And there is a mutual admiration and respect and the kind of high five at the end of the day or when you solve a problem. It can be very complicated and then you break it down and make it simple and then you solve it. We love what we do and everybody's grateful. We've never had a layoff. But it just isn't conducive to a ping pong table and pool table like you see in other tech companies. When we're walking that door on a shift till we leave, we're going at it.
It's important that people treat their work with that level of respect. And I think the proof is in the pudding that you have an incredible returning customer rate and customer retention. Does that intensity help you stand out against some of those big box cloud providers and platforms?
Absolutely. In fact, it's the primary reason because of being a white glove regional player. And I spoke earlier about growing up with some of these companies. We remain relevant because we've grown up with them. They know who we are. There's no pressure to leave. It's like nobody's going to get fired over picking AWS or IBM. But if you pick a regional player and something goes wrong, you'll get fired. And so we haven't had to really cope with that because we've grown up with the core of our customers. Our retention is well into the 90%. And like any place, you will have customers who are unhappy, but we have very few of them. And generally, they may be right. We're probably not the right fit. It's rare, but it happens. In 21 years, I fired one customer just because I can't speak why, but I can say they were out of line and I wasn't going to take someone off their account. He actually is the smartest guy in our company, and the point is he was the right guy and I wouldn't do it. And so I gave him 30 days, find someone else. That's one time. But in 21 years, 95% of the customers we lose are because they get bought. M&A. So it's like a double-edged sword. Take Care Whole Health, Jim Hummer, sold to Take Care Health. Then they stayed. Then they sold to Walgreens. Walgreens had 12 of their own data centers, so they left. Cleveland Heart Lab Jake Orville was 0 out of the gate, and he was then the 100th largest lab in America within a few years, and then he sold to Quest. Same scenario. I've been able to hold on to some of those, but that's typically where I'm going to lose my customer. And that's a good thing to be able to say. The bulk of my customers leave because of their success, because they're sold, and they make money, and they've done well for their clients and their shareholders. And a lot of times they've become friends. And so it's a catch-22, a double-edged sword. Successful, they did it here, we were part of that, the revenue's gone. But interestingly enough, some of those have come back and reinvested in other companies themselves or with others and have come back as customers. I've been around long enough to see that cycle happen. But the retention, I'd like to say a lot of it has to do with us staying the best we can possibly be in a good team and deliver a good product and service at the right price. But also, we know we're like an augmentation of their staff. Whoever is serving that account is like an employee of that account. And they can go to quarterly, weekly, whatever type of meetings that require our attention and understand their business and make contributions to these objectives and how we deliver the technology so that they can improve their efficiencies and be better focused on their business versus the technology. So the retention is good. It's very difficult to lose a customer when you weren't the right pick. That's just emotional. But on the other hand, that's also a catch-22 because if I'm not the right pick, I want them to be well served, and I want them to be with the right customer or the right vendor. But there's little of that. But when it does happen, I think in the end, they pick the right vendor, then they're better for it.
I think that's great perspective, and you've been with the company for 21 years, so you've been able to see. I also think it's interesting how in this day and age, efficiency is everything, but when it comes down to it, how do you actually become more efficient? And people might not even think about data or the services you provide playing a key role in that. And I think, too, you have obviously great recognition here in Cleveland. You partner with the Rock Hall, Cleveland Museum Art, and the Cleveland Orchestra, correct?
The Rock Hall, we took them to the promised land, if you will, and we're there about 10 years plus. And that's an example of succeeding and working yourself out of the job, taking tapes and old stuff and digitizing it and getting it online and getting it to profiles. They accomplished that, and we helped them build a staff and pick the right people, and we introduced cybersecurity and incident response plans and tabletop exercises. So our job was done. And sadly, we lost the account, but I remain very good friends and good rapport with them and with Greg Harris in particular. And their team knows we're here if they ever need us. But that's one where we worked ourselves out over a decade. But it was a very strong, good relationship, and we succeeded together. And no one's going to die if the videos are lost, but those are gems.
Absolutely.
Those to the world. The entertainment world, rock and roll. The Cleveland Art Museum, we have a very strong relationship. We're their managed service provider. We're also their cloud provider. And Art Lens and all of the different stuff that Jane Alexander, the CIO there, and her talented team have done in the exhibits. She's brought the collection, because a museum is known by its collection, and she's brought the collection alive and to the world through IT. So that's been cool and fun. And then the Cleveland Orchestra is very much the same thing. Those are treasures, those recordings. And People that love classical music like myself, those are preserved for eternity now and can be accessed more easily, and they can record and keep those archives forever.
Mm-hmm. That's incredible, especially because they carry so much weight, not just in Cleveland, but throughout the world. How do you feel about being able to talk about these partnerships? Does it sometimes hit you like, wow, we've worked with these incredible institutions? Does it ever really catch you off guard, or does it just reaffirm everything that you guys have built?
I would say, number one, it's a quiet satisfaction, and it's not just them. I get the same quiet satisfaction from a software company that starts out year one at $250,000 revenue, and 10 years later they're a $100 million company. And I've had some of those, and they're sold a couple of times. I have brand muscle. Started out with Phil Alexander, who was a personal friend, and he grew very large and sold his company. And then even when he sold, they stayed with us for quite some time. There's a quiet satisfaction in watching that progression of success and challenges and how they overcome obstacles and how we overcome them together. But the orchestra and the museum and the Rock Hall are definitely, in my mind, three of the gems of Cleveland. And to serve them all for a long time, over a decade at once, was pretty cool. It was fun. And I still do, as a donor and a vendor, a lot of the social things that are tied up with the museum that are fun, and exhibit openings and behind the scenes and conservation or whatever. But all those things have become a better consumer of art and those institutions, but also as a donor, and then deeper, wider as a vendor.
Struggling with digital marketing, branding, or website design? Does it seem impossible to navigate the landscape of social media, influencers, and algorithm tweaks? At VividFront, we thrive on challenges like these. When the rules constantly shift, we don't just adapt, we excel. We've cracked the code for growth time and time again, propelling some of the biggest names in e-commerce and B2B to new heights. With our custom digital marketing solutions, we don't just promise results, we deliver them. Ready to take your business to the next level? Visit VividFront.com today to get started.
The IT landscape is moving faster than ever. We're seeing global IT spending projected to surpass $5.5 trillion this year, obviously heavily driven by AI infrastructure. I feel like AI is something that comes up every single day, especially with data centers. So how is this rise changing the physical reality of data centers?
That's a deep and wide question, and because there's a lot of ways I could go with that, but I'll pick a few that we can bite on. And one of them is data centers themselves, who are tier 3, they would be called top data center facilities. We've known machine learning, monitoring, bells and whistles, patching, if you will, those kinds of things for decades. So for us, it's just a new name, and it's a little better exponentially than it used to be. Now you switch that into consumerism, and first, before you had AI per se, the buzzword was in the IoT of things, the Internet of Things, computers on your refrigerator and your thermostat. And that, in essence, is AI. And that is like physical servers, virtualization came around, then it allowed cloud. So in the same sense, you have Internet of Things, these little tools and gadgets that tell us what's going on in our homes or whatever, and then AI. So the monetization of something that already existed. And then more money came behind it. And then there's a proliferation. And so I've experienced it in a way of what's called Moore's Law. And Moore's Law is just how something grows exponentially. It hits plateaus, then it hits exponentially again. And AI has been the most exponential growth in what's Moore's Law in my 21 years. In fact, easiest way for me to describe my interpretation of Moore's Law would be 21 years ago, the gymnasium took us 48 steps to get across. Today, that same length of gymnasium takes 3 steps from the efficiencies and improvements through AI and tools. And in 1 or 2 years, it'll probably take 1 step. And that's really a simple way. I have seen Moore's Law plateau twice in 21 years. In my viewpoint, I could say because of revenue or because of I didn't see new inventions or new progress in things. And right before AI hit, we were at what I would term a plateau. And then when it was monetized and became consumer-driven, then it gave us another run at what's called Moore's Law. And the proliferation, the exponential growth.
Mm-hmm.
And then investment. And that investment didn't need to come before because it wasn't thought of. So it's right timing. And good things happen from it. And good things don't. Bad things happen from it. And for example, in the cybersecurity landscape, we have had what we would call a multi-layer approach to defense for years. And now anything you would read would say AI has created a need to have a multi-layer defense. David Kennedy from Trusted Sec, who you often see on CNN or Fox, he's local, they're a phenomenal company. And I heard him say, at an event of his, he takes care of the Cleveland Cavaliers, and he had one of the Indians experts and the CIO of the Cavs, Conley, and at the Guardians, Whitney Kuzma, and they talked about this threat landscape being no different than 10, 20 years ago. No different. It's the same actors. They're going after the same things. The only difference is the defense and the offense is more exponential. It's more powerful. It's the same multi-layer defense. It's the same things you're defending. But it's now 1,000 times they have to hit the bank. So now it's moved to the defenders have to do it 1,001. Just 1,001. And that's really an oversimplification of how it's changed. But before the web data-centric world, you want to rob the bank, you go to the teller and you rob the bank. Now you can rob them online and get exponentially more, sad to say, and then whatever. But the same threat actors, nation states, criminal groups, and just bad actors are the same today. And they, like you and I, have access to the same AI tools, and they're used in reverse engineering in the way in which it makes it more difficult. And if a company hasn't progressed and gotten one point better, then you're out of the game. You're of no help. And it's that fast of a pace that some of the tools we change monthly, where we used to change them yearly. When we first started, you had a firewall, and you protected the moat. And that was like, and you had a VPN, and you had maybe 10 rules, and now that's like a joke. That's like a component still, but it's become more efficient and more profound. But we had a tool that I won't name because they're great today, and they weren't when we used them early for payment card industry standards. We did a lot of work with Rosetta, who used to be here, and they had a lot of online companies like LensCrafters, Pearl Vision, Sunglass. So we had to do PCI, payment card industry protection. And we had a tool which basically took us down all kinds of rat holes. So by the time you figured out what was going on, it was, whoa. But it was acceptable in the industry. Today, that same tool is so amazing, so fast, so smart, so sharp. There are no rat holes. It tells you right away where it's coming from and what you got to do. And that's kind of how it's all played out.
So interesting. So when a prospective client comes to you, would you say they're usually acting proactively, or are they coming to you panicked because there was a breach or something of that sort?
I think the breach would be what you would think logically, but that's not instantaneous, because data, even though it's so much virtualized and easier to move today than ever, it's still hard to move and begin again. So handling the breach is the first order of business. And depending on the cause and effect of that breach is going to determine whether they're knocking on my door. It's not my style to see that someone's hurt by a breach and then call on them. They don't need to be pitched. They need to solve the problem. But it is my style if they come to me after that to be collegial. I don't need to bad rap the team that did it. It could happen to anybody. What I need to do is explain to them what my approach would be going forward. Or maybe some of the things that they missed in terms of framework, security framework, or audits, or law, or public policy that they missed. Safe harbor laws in Ohio, for example. And then it's a conversation because they were breached. But when they're breached, in the middle of that, we don't see them. If we have customers who are breached, we've built a lot of strong relationships with federal law enforcement, and we can help them get in early and often and help retrieve and solve and make that situation better quickly. And it's not just the infrastructure, it's their tools and their vested interest. And then the whole ransomware world and how to teach our clients proactively to separate their data from their backup so that if they have to restore, they can restore without infection. And the big mistake is they don't, and they restore, and then their restoration is already infected. So just simple things that you would think, of course, and no, it's crazy. So you end up winning because, sadly, companies are losing in defending and going deep and wide and adding to the exponential nature of your defense layers. And you don't wish it on anybody, competitor or customer, anybody. If you're down for 7 days, this is a crazy statistic that still, this I can't get my head around. 7 days you're down in a web and data-centric world, within 1 year you're bankrupt. So 7 days, 1 year, you're gone.
Wow.
Yeah, because they call your competitor and they never come back. Go on, brand damage.
Absolutely.
So it's so critical. So once again, that goes back to the culture, and there's no playtime.
You guys are intense, yeah.
There's no playtime.
There's no company happy hours at 5 p.m.
No, you don't come out, no martini lunch and come back. It's none of that. So they come to us for different reasons. They come to us because they're referred mostly. It's my number one form of business, and I think the number one form of opportunity through referral is through my personal participation on a number of boards, local and national, both. And I've come to believe and play out, if you serve on a board, oftentimes you have to contribute financially. You have to attend the meetings. You have to be on a committee. You have to participate. And you learn new skills. You bring your skills. And your peers see one of a few things. You see those people that join the board and they're on the board in name. And you lose respect for them. It's human nature. Then you see those that are in it, but they're too busy and it's neutral. And then you see people who are all in. And the mission, like I'm in North Coast Community Homes, and the constituency are residents they're intellectual developmentally disabled adults in residential homes. And then they have events a couple times a year, and pizza party and the bowling, and you're out with your constituents and you get a taste of that in life, and it's very special. It's hard to put a description to. But then your peers on that board see you bowling, eating pizza, and having fun with your constituents and doing your job and offering strategy and helping raise money. And long story short, they know what you do, and then suddenly they need what you do. And they go, and I've heard this, they've told me this in different ways. If he's this passionate and good at this, and he pays to be here, imagine how good he would be if we paid him to do what we need. And it really is a cause and effect, because there has to be an explanation. You do good karma, all that's real, it's true. And that's been the number one way I've gained new customers. I'd like to say it was bailing people out of their trouble. I do that, but it's because, and it goes to your question of a differentiator in Cleveland, because we're from here, it's also because we serve here. So, as corny as it might sound, the methodology is to love and serve. And in that love and service is opportunity pipeline.
I love that. And that's a perfect segue to the marketing portion of our conversation, because your space is incredibly difficult from a marketing perspective. But because you are a very relationships-driven person, it has transcended into your marketing efforts. So zooming out a bit, can you share a bit of your marketing philosophy for your company?
You're correct, and it's impossible. In that, first of all, I have a huge respect for marketing people, and I've been heard to say they're the smartest people in any company. They have to know everything because they got to drive revenue. If you don't drive revenue, a salesperson doesn't get the call, the lights go out. And messaging and branding and all that. And then internal employees being proud of what your messaging is versus also the external. And for me, my biggest challenge that I've observed in my marketing efforts, either my own or others helping us, is it's noisy. It's very noisy. There's a lot of ads. There's a lot of lead generation, this, that, and the other. And so many thousands of different ways to go. And so many players, and which adds to the noise. So I believe in traditional marketing. My son's in South Carolina, and he sells shipping and trucking, and he's first week, just started a couple months back. So what'd you do this week? Oh, I'll walk up and down the street here, and we're knocking on warehouse doors. And I was like, man, I've been 21 years. I knocked on nobody's door. Still do that? He said, I sold 3 accounts this month. I was like, wow. So it's not that I'm knocking on doors and cold calls, but what I do mostly myself is warm calls. I leverage those 21 years and that experience and that record. And however this sounds, I've earned standing and credibility in the marketplace through what we do day to day, but also how I've loved and served in the community. You combine that and you have leverage. And when I call, people answer the phone. And if there's an opportunity or an RFP or something to be had, they'll offer it up. But I've also learned that webinars, breakfast panels, social media, pushing awards and things out, taking credit for things that you deserve, are like coordinates being called in for soldiers who are being overtaken in this noise. You need both. If it were just me and what I do day to day, it's nice, drives a lot, we get a lot of deals. We keep a lot of deals for the same reason. But I need to call in that firepower. I need those experts from the Department of Justice or the FBI to come to our breakfast panels and talk to our prospects and our customers and enhance that stand. Why would Blue Bridge be a choice? Why would you stay with a local company instead of a big box? And display your subject matter expert. How else but in conversation with the leaders in all the different verticals of that issue, whether it's lawyers, DOJ, an attorney, district attorney, FBI agent, and they're all on a panel, and an auditor. It's a great recipe. And I would say that initially that's how we built our company, and we still do it. And I see it as not just calling in coordinates, but I also see it as a way. It can't be seen or known by everybody because of this love and service on boards.
There's only so much of you to go around.
I'm on 7 boards. It's a lot of work. I'm active on all of them. And that's correct. And we have to have technical reasons known why we're the right choice, why they need to be with us. And luckily, a lot of our base and customers and references and so forth are really our biggest salespeople. And as I say, the referrals are just, it's earned. So we say, oh, you get referrals because you ask for them. No. You need to ask, yes, because people have their own life and they're busy and their radar's somewhere else. But they're not going to move on it if they're not fully convinced that you're the one. Mm-hmm. And you take that ask very seriously and use it very little. And you hope that when people they're at the cocktail party and their friends talking about this data that was breached and how their backups failed and so on, you should call my guy. And then the magic happens. Because right away you're 3/4 down the line in the sale.
Absolutely. So correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing, it sounds like you don't have a ton of marketing in place, whether it's email marketing or paid media, SEO, or do you have some low-level marketing efforts outside of what you're doing from leveraging your own personal networks or tapping into your current customers?
That's a great question. And to be brutally honest, we would get a D or an F in your question because of all the other things that have been successful. There's, once again, a catch-22. Operational excellence is your primary focus. And if you grow too fast, which a lot of my competitors have done, is they burn out and fail, or they sell for less, or whatever. I've seen people trip up left and right by growing in this world too fast. You cannot do that. No matter what infrastructure or people you have to be ahead in HR and ahead in infrastructure to sell up to it. Mm-hmm. It's just my opinion. And because of that, when you grow, it's tough. You gain 3 and you lose 2. What's the point? If you gain 3 and you keep 2, now that's the point. And for us today, we're at a place where calling in those coordinates, we need to do better. And do we have social media? Yeah, we do. There's a post pretty much every day. They're pretty good. Do we have a website? Yeah. Is it improved this year? Yeah, we bet. Should it be better? Yeah, but we're too busy doing what we have to do to worry about those things that should be done in terms of marketing. The SEO you mentioned has changed radically different. Yeah. We do have a couple engineers who know that and took us out of the Flintstone era of SEO, and at least we're in the right direction. But yes, brutally honest, it's a place where we now have the infrastructure and the HR a number of steps ahead that we could stand to grow, if that makes sense, mm-hmm. and not lose operational excellence.
I think that's a great spot to be in.
It's a great spot, and it's also important for me to understand my limitations. I'm a great moderator for a panel and these other things I noted, but that's, once again, you got 100 people there, you haven't hit 10,000 that are prospective buyers. Mm-hmm. So there's work to be done, and there's room to grow. And so that is a good place. And what I explained prior did get us to where we are and did give us standing and credibility in the marketplace, brand recognition, good name recognition. So that's a success. But to go to the next level, we're going to need to fuse them together.
Absolutely, because at some point you have to slow down as well. And you being one of your largest growth drivers will hit a point where it stops. And I think from a marketing perspective, you have the infrastructure, but now it's really about pulling those levers intentionally. You have proven experience, I think, leaning into thought leadership, case studies, blog content, letting your team who are subject matter experts, encouraging them to post about their expertise, getting on podcasts, maybe starting a podcast. There's a lot of ways that you can go outside of just pumping money into paid media, which might not even be the right move given your space, that there's a lot of untapped potential, but you're in a perfect position because you have a strong foundation, which many people don't. And they just start pumping money into marketing without really knowing who they are or having anything to back it up.
I agree with that selfishly, 100%, but I also agree with that in that there's work to be done. Mm-hmm. And that's a good thing, because it would not be a good thing as if you have more infrastructure, great HR, great tools, and no path to driving revenue, internally, organic, whatever, potentially buying another, all those kinds of things are there. But you said it, it's impossible, but it's doable. And I have the respect that I have for those who are marketing are usually, in my viewpoint, the smartest people. They're often left brain, right brain. They're more creative and research methods, science versus art, and we got to apply that. And it's a choice. Do you really want to go to the next level? And if the answer is yes, then we have to make adjustments, and we have to get better at standing out in the noise.
Selfishly, I'm going to take that compliment as a marketer. When it's all said and done, what do you want the real legacy of Blue Bridge Networks and your time leading it to be here in Northeast Ohio?
So I have, as any good company would, a succession plan. And I have 3 years. My brother's son-in-law, Carmen Gianguzu, who is, in 3 years, learned unbelievable amounts. He's the only person I've been willing to teach in 21 years. I've started out with a few and said, no, I'm not going to do it.
You don't make the cut.
I love this guy. He's very talented. And we have a relationship where I said, the best teacher is one who is one day no longer needed. Because I'm going to teach you everything I got, and then you're on your own. And I don't know how many years he is from that or isn't, but I'm too close to it to say, but it's all very positive. And the other point that I told him in terms of legacy is, you're you, not me. So take what I give you and apply it that works, and then take what you know, or instinctively or otherwise, and apply it. And my goal is you'll do better than I do. And the other part of it, in terms of legacy, is in 21 years, I've seen a lot of people make a lot of money and sell companies. And we've chosen, to this point, in 21 years, to drive revenue and add customers and employees and infrastructure and facilities. I think there's something to be said as a Clevelander to build a company that's a legacy company that doesn't get sold and broken apart and lost. And from my viewpoint, that's where I'll take it to. What they do after me will be out of my control. But for this point, I've been very satisfied that the legacy is we make money for the shareholders. We're profitable. We've never not been. We've never had a layoff. We invest in not bleeding edge, but cutting edge infrastructure and facilities. And so the people I leave behind or that I teach or spend time with, I also hope that they will continue in that vein of love and service, of serving on boards. And it's an interesting thing because the recipe isn't just driving revenue. It's if you can take your avocation and mix it with your vocation, and the result happens to drive revenue, it's a great situation. Because, trust me, if it were just the four walls of the data center, I'd be climbing them.
Yeah.
But to get outside of them and to bring value to a customer about their business and IT objectives, or to be on a board and serve those constituents, adds meaning and value to my life, brings skill sets that I wouldn't have learned here. And so I hope that I leave that behind, that people are inspired to continue that legacy of leadership. And Blue Bridge, in my viewpoint, looking back, early on, I was able to get it to look bigger than it was, not because of any myth, or it was because of the love and service, because I was everywhere, networking, shaking hands, kissing babies, win awards, join a board. This recipe, and then you grow into it. Because you have legs, you have standing and credibility through that avocation and vocation blended, you can leverage that. And people like to do business with people they know, they like, they trust. And what better way to know and trust besides excelling at your day-to-day than serving side by side a certain constituency.
I'm certainly inspired. Are you ready to be in the hot seat?
Ticket?
Best piece of advice for someone looking to completely reinvent their career?
That's a great question. I'll tell you what I did. I took skills and aptitude and competency from another world and transferred them to this world. Never underestimate that you carry those with you and can build your base off that. I mean, if you look at construction and you say loads, right? Building, airflow, HVAC, we have cooling, electricity. All of those fundamental things of building and the physics of those elements are relevant. And so it's easy to transfer them. They don't look the same, but they are the same. So never underestimate your talents or abilities, even if you're the one that shaked hands and kissed babies and you don't know anything about airflow. It's a great place to start, and there's use. And you can build off whatever those talents, skill sets, like things you like or love that you want to improve, and you're willing to learn and become certified. That's the path. You shortchange yourself if you cut out and undervalue what you've done to that point.
A current technology trend you think is currently overhyped?
I would tell you AI, and you could go all over with that, but in my viewpoint, I like to think about a story that was told to me a long time ago about the backhoe front loader. And the big argument with the ditch diggers and the laborers union was, this machine's going to take us all out of work. Let's all think about today and the last backhoe front loader you saw on the street. You had an operator, and you had 2 or 3 men or women around that operator with shovels or standing there or whatever.
Yeah.
You got the guy or gal that fixes it, designs it, sells it, or maintains it, so on and so on. And so everybody said this machine will replace the ditch digger. It helped, it improved, it changed the dynamics, it sped things up, and it still does. And there are projects that it's a must, but it didn't take everybody. The laborers union's still around. You know, they're still doing work. And the city workers still stand around the backhoe with shovels. So it's not that AI isn't going to do what you think. There's some interesting things I've heard about, like a living wage, what will happen if all these jobs are lost. And 10 years ago, Hitachi was talking about it and how difficult that'll be in a capitalistic society to make a fair wage for others who can't be employed because things are taken. That's the hype. That's not going to happen. Because just like the backhoe, there are so many things that we didn't think of that are going to come from what it does.
Agreed. Your absolute favorite spot to go fishing on Lake Erie?
That's a fun one. I love to fish if it's for perch over by Lakeside and walleye of Kelly's Island. And then where I live now, I've been in the valley, Chagrin Valley, for 6-7 years now. I have a 7-acre lake and stock it with, they're about 15-inch bass now, so I don't have to drive or boat as far. I can just go in my front yard and
Oh, that's so fun.
fish. Yeah, it's been nice. And my son's picked up on it too, and my granddaughters tag along. So they're 3 twins. So that would be my favorite spot. It's altered a lot because I spend a lot more time at home because it's very different than where I lived in the Heights with woods and water and things. And some of the best restaurants. And it's like being on vacation living out there.
Oh, yeah, and that's the perfect segue to my next rapid fire question, a favorite Cleveland restaurant.
It's easy. Marble Room. Hands down.
There you go.
In Chagrin Falls, 17 River Grill.
Oh, I'm going there this weekend. I've never been. I'm excited.
Unbelievable. Excellent. And you get to view the falls. It's like being on vacation. You see the waterfalls and your beautiful dinner, excellent service. But the Marble Room, hands down. I was just there for my birthday Saturday night.
Oh, Wow. Happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
Favorite Cleveland coffee shop?
It's impossible to have one. My wife and I go to Bonaire, and there's this place called Gio's. The Dutch are the best espresso coffee makers in the planet, and Gio's is the best in the planet. I used to love Pour, but Charlie shut it down on Euclid Avenue, and that was my go-to spot when I lived in the Heights. I took the train, and I'd walk up Euclid and go to Pour. I really don't have one in Cleveland because there's nothing that can compare to Gio's. The best I can do is make it at home on my own. And I hate to say Starbucks because it's a national chain in that way, but I do like Starbucks. And Charlie's place closed, so I'm going to say Gio's in Bonaire, even though it's not Cleveland.
It's all good. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today. Where can our listeners go to learn more about Blue Bridge Networks and connect with you directly?
BlueBridgeNetworks.com. I also have a website myself, which has my contact info, is kevinjgoodman.com. And those are probably two easiest ways. My email, if someone wanted to reach out, is kjg@bbnllc.com. And my door and line are always open. And it's a fun part of my job. People who call and say, my daughter is at Mercyhurst, and they're going to be in cyber, and they want to talk, and I'd say, okay, you come meet Stephen Jones. He's our senior cyber analyst. He attended the Air Force Academy. He'll talk to your son. And so my line and door is open, and my direct line is 216-367-7580. I can't always say I'll catch the call that fast, but I do promise, like the old days, within 24 hours, I'll get back to you no matter what the question is. If it's around technology, board, for example, you've never given blood, and I'm on the Red Cross board, and you see me posting about blood and being a blood ambassador, and you want to know what it's like, call me. We'll talk about the blood giving experience.
Thank you, Kevin.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Now it's time to start making moves. Head to vividfront.com/marketing moves for exclusive marketing materials. Every episode, we add more of our greatest insider secrets to help you move towards success. See you next time.